Even if the damn trickster did fortunately find my mountain, I hope he teleports right in front of me so I can scar him with my blistering hot cauldron water. Unless it goes through him. Eric thought of such similar scenarios whenever he felt scornful. I can stay and wait gladly with another mountain until another mountain forms above me. No time for self-pity nor loneliness. Thus Eric Wickerstone even cooked up some new attire. His mountain was rather frigid, so he got himself a black woolly robe and even a fuzzy oval cap atop his cranium of scraggly mop hair. The radiating spells took a toll on his very waking life energy, and even a little while after establishing worlds, he had to basically recharge while waiting. His skin grew rougher and drier and cracked and bled, and his whole head looked wrinkled and even pickled after wear and tear from practicing and perfecting magic that aged his mortal body profusely. He looked and felt as if he had aged decades after about a fortnight of setting everything up. However, outside, a different perspective was developing simultaneously that determined his life's fate. A young troubled man with black hair and brown eyes named Brad lay in bed and stared in a trance at his ceiling in his usual state of mind that he found himself in late at night. Brad suspected a couple of reasons for this. He was no insomniac and slept fine until recently. Something anchored on his conscience, something he couldn't explain easily if he were to confess. The second and utterly worst problem of his terrible nocturnal grieving was stuff of nightmares of a foreboding, dark, cavernous, hollow, drippy cave lit by torches of a green fire, floating in the air in a row of both sides of a stony spiral staircase, to a wide, barren oak door beholding a man's hideous, hacking, whinnying, dry cackle, as though he had asthma or bronchitis or both behind it. Something involving these radiated a beyond fishy vibe north of his valley home that began to it beckoned and aided him to explore. Every nightmare began when the stark white coin that was the moon hung high in the pitch-black nocturnal sky and blared parallel to an equally pulsing emerald from the entire mountain. As though it were radioactive all the same. The mountain glowed. Brad's own bizarre theories of the meaning of which became tattooed on his subconscious, even if he swept it under the heavy rug of his upper conscience. Whereupon his awareness would poke out and he'd wake up in a cold sweat, the dastardly menacing, sharp, shrill laugh echoing in his feverish mind, as though it knew something was going to come. His heartbeat invoked to a jackhammer rate, similar to when one wakes up after falling in a dream. In the eerie realism that remained to make itself at home, the mountain had always presented a source of essence, of an enigma even beyond the worst of the worst recurring dreams emerged. The gut feeling of distrust of the man's spitefully toned laugh. The confidence, the joy in it. persisted until it almost made him afraid to sleep. They did not come again every night, yet enough to provoke concern that that man wanted something he had, Brad presumed. He had never discussed nor confessed it to anybody except one person, of whom he trusted like a psychiatrist. Like a psychiatric saint. The fear would only naturally grow if he kept peering out of a small window and wonder what awaited above all places, or who. Or what disguises whom. He already more than suspected whoever laughed so ghastly in the dreams, to the glowing like the summit itself, wear a strong spell in a giant cauldron. The man's voice was baritone and creaky and crooked and croaked and about old enough to be his grandfather. Any other Disney-esque fantasy fairy tale valley of meadows and babbling brooks would also include a similar rock formation nearby, yet without half as much enigma involved. Someplace above, there was implied a way to this one's interior. Inside the mountain? Inside or on top? The worst of the worst premonition dreams yet were of craggly, pickled in vinegar hands, or rather claws, hovering over the single cauldron's curling snake smoke and rest about the man's appearance. About 5 foot, 11 inches tall, in indeterminate age, mid-50s if one guessed incorrectly. Long, unkempt hair, a peculiar black sable hat, fuzzy, perched atop like a beret, and a lab coat for kicks, for a future plan. Brad thought he looked like some sort of strange kind of mad warlock scientist. Yeah, magic was his science, and vice versa. Pale flesh had dry as his laugh. Worst part was his eyebrows curving down, his wide grins worthy of the Cheshire Cat signaling down to horrific images. The cauldron displayed. The corpse-rankled tree, wretchedly bitter spirits, that had stark white or raven-black light where their eyes used to be, gray wings, tattered robes. They dwelled and roamed in worlds of dimly lit, moss-ridden, abandoned temples in which their regretful shrieks and howls of agony echoed. Brad felt as sorry for them as creeped out. Someone had to help them if this was what sorcery beheld the Wizard's Mountain. If that's what he was. He couldn't really just be a scientist. A scientist doesn't really go for troublemaking. He hoped. A sanctuary for him and a purgatory prison for lamenting captured souls. This settled the last nightmare Brad had woke from, and now much more in determination than fear. He laced up his hiking boots with a burning anger or vengeful spite merging in his chest. Those lucid dreams, or messages, were crystal clear. Even if Brad got tricked into magic worlds that led to a decoy top floor room and a cardboard cutout of that despicable man, even if it held a trap door back down to the entrance again. Brad stepped out into the morning sun, curiously shining bright in front of the mountain, as if nothing was there at all within, and blocked a clear view. An invigorating rush of pine and grass swirled about his nostrils. Venturing up there unarmed, Brad would make do. In the time it took him to climb far enough to spot a gaping dark mouth and stop hearing birds chirp, a funny gut feeling arose when the words reverberated in his mind. "I'm waiting for you." Brad need not answer, but instead whispered a macabre sing-along poem to distract it. "Dead father, dead mother, dead sister, dead brother, all smothered. Another slather of butter on their roast buzzard cadaver, and a sliver on the liver instead of their undead bread, since it necessarily shed." The last part, or rather all of it, didn't make total sense to Brad if it were taken literally, nor had he yet seen a zombie family gorge on such a nature table turning feast of biodegradability, but oh well. Maybe he'd see something better to share, provided he got out of this alive. Just going up and stepping on slippery stones, empty-handed before even going near the man in his nightmares, was jumping the gun before the roulette was on a delayed plane to Russia. The man was fair enough not to hide the clearly open entrance, not even an oak door here. Figures. Brad would wonder about the silly morbid poem if he had time later, like if that man wanted to hear it or if he already was listening, and thought it cheesy enough to elect Brad mayor of Wisconsin. After all, did Edgar Allan Poe wake up every single day singing "Good Morning Baltimore"? Brad thought sarcastically. He tried to lighten himself up to be courageous. If spirits wailed in the nightmares of my rival to rescue, they're not the harmless. They're not the harmful ones. They wished for a knight in shining armor and not an idiot in tinfoil, you coward. Nor was it ever going to be useful to back on himself. His heart beat faster on the paranoid possibility that to scare him off, the same ghastly grin would shimmer out of nowhere, and what if it had a purple spotted forked tongue that licked the sharp pointed teeth like Brad was lured into a trap for this creature's dinner? Or rather, that thing would help him against this man. Brad reluctantly entered. With no light whatsoever at the entrance, and called out, "Uncle Neville?"